Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the HR and Payroll 2.0 podcast. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and as always, I'm joined by the legendary Julie Fernandez. Welcome, Julie.
Thanks, Pete. And we today are going to do some kind of fun riffing around the corner, right? And why don't you introduce Tiana, who's joining us today?
Yeah. I'm excited to bring on Tiana Neal. She is a fellow ATLian. Shout out to the Braves. I wore my Braves jersey for you, Tiana.
Good.
And she is, again, one of the big growing, I feel like, HR tech community here in the ATL. She's an HRIS expert, a payroll strategist, and the CEO of Transcenders Consulting Group. And also, Julie, I don't know if you realize this, she's a fellow Work Defined podcaster, obviously, on the host of The Human Role. So, Tiana, super to have you.
Thank you both, Pete and Julie, for having me on. I've seen Pete many years being in this industry. So, and I've had many colleagues tell me, you got to meet Pete. It took maybe a year, you guys out there. So don't be discouraged because he is super busy, but I'm really excited to be on share insights.
Yeah, I love that you reached out to me, and I'm still going to figure it out, Julie. You got to come up for it, but we have to have some sort of an ATL HR tech get together because there are so many folks here, very important people here in the community that we could get together and have a cool event. So I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to be the spearhead of the HR tech event.
I do agree. We could post it on social media and make everybody jealous.
Exactly. Yeah, and they don't know how Atlanta parties unless you partied in Atlanta. So I'm just saying.
Oh no, we're off the rails already. This is going to be a long segment.
We're going to have fun. We're going to have fun on this one. But you want to do the honors, Julie?
I do. So, Tiana, I think you also entered your career through kind of the HR payroll gateway. Tell us how you ended up here and why do you stay?
Yeah. So, I am just the standard payroll person who payroll just fell into my lap. I went to college for radio, television, film. I thought I was going to be like on the news reporting. And I quickly realized I did not like that area. But I got connected with some ADP managers and got on with ADP when I was younger and learned all payroll, taxation, all of their system platforms, which was really helpful from small business to major accounts. And then heavily got into implementations and benefits. And once I left ADP, got into HR operations. So that's what really catapulted me into HRIS, which I fell in love with. I had no clue I was going to be a behind the scenes systems person. I like build outs. I like to say untangling the web, and fixing things was really my just mojo that I loved. And so it just so happened that no one in the companies I was at wanted to even touch payroll. You guys know the dreadful click of the button. Who's going to click the button? So I was like, oh, that's fine. I'll do it. Everything's fixable, so that always stayed with me.
Once you get it on you can't get it off.
Exactly. Very true.
Ew, payroll.
So that always stayed with me, followed me everywhere. But then I just continued to elevate my career with just learning multiple systems, raising my hand when I had no idea what I was raising my hand for, but I always figured it out. And that has helped me tremendously now in the consulting space. And it's just fun. It's really just like going in and like, people are very scared of the HR tech world and systems. And it's like, it's not that scary, you guys, training people and helping people just like kind of go with the flow and just seeing them be so uncertain, but then turn to positivity and enjoying their system is really, what keeps me afloat.
Yeah. It sounds a little bit like mine and Heather Stevenson that came on, our youthful ignorance that we had when we would volunteer for things like, I'll do payroll, I'll try that. I'll do this. I'll transform that. But it's such a learning experience,
I've got to steal
There's
that
an element
phrase.
of fearlessness, right? So you have to be fearless. And maybe, if in college they told people that there's an extreme sports career and that is payroll, we might actually gen up a little bit more.
Right? They're pitching it all wrong.
They're pitching it all wrong.
It's so good, right? I mean, I think we all have feel this, right? Is payroll and HR don't exactly draw I guess the astronauts or whatever you want to put on
first
a pedestal,
draft.
brightest of the world, scientists, right? I don't know, whatever. But it's not it's never your first thought by anybody. But then it's so cool that people get here and then fall in love with it, or I don't know, get stuck, whatever. but they stay, and there's some tremendous talent like yourself and others who have fought. Most of them tripped and fell and landed in payroll or HR. And they stuck around, thankfully. So it's almost like how you have a magnet, Julie, when you're a kid, and you would put the little balls down, and they would all suck to the magnet or whatever. It's like we need to get people to be closer to the magnet. You know what I mean? And I don't know how we get people closer to the magnet because we're just picking up people straggling on the outside that aren't really aware, and we're keeping them. So that's fantastic.
No, it's so funny. I was
Yeah.
at an event recently and they were talking about how the host was talking about how they just got thrusted into benefits and never went to school for it. And I was like, oh, that's funny. The same thing for payroll. Like you just get thrusted in, you have access to everyone's information and you're literally
Yeah.
sometimes training yourself and just learning as you go. Lots of compliance, that goes into everything that people don't know about. But I'm sure we will dip into that today.
Hey, Tiana, you mentioned that you tried starting your career in like radio, TV, and film, which is kind of its own beast, right? And I'm just curious, as you come around full circle and have your own podcast,
Human
The
role.
Human Role, does that scratch that itch, or is it really totally different than what you thought you were
Yeah,
trying to
you
do
did.
in the
You
beginning?
definitely nailed it. It's different from what I thought, but life does come full circle, as we know. And the irony, last year, I started thinking about it a little more, and I was like, wait a minute. Technically, I did kind of want to do something like this, but obviously back then, social media wasn't as heavy as it, is now. So it did totally come full circle. I definitely, when I started interning at news stations, just hustle and bustle throughout the day was just not my thing. And chasing news stories was not my thing. But then ironically, I'm chasing payroll and people for their time cards. So, it is what it is. I guess foundationally, it all kind of mirrors one another. But yes, things are coming back around full circle. And so my whole schooling wasn't for nothing like how I thought initially. It worked out in the end.
Yeah. Do you know what's funny? I've obviously worked in media and entertainment with my time at Disney and then consulting after that for some of the studios. And I don't think people understand what they're getting into, what it actually takes. It's not just walking on camera and ta-da, even the podcast. I think you've probably learned that with your podcast. I have. It's not just flipping on a mic and talking. There's a lot of effort that goes into it, and a whole lot of background work before you ever walk on that stage and stand in front of the camera or flip, whatever. I don't think people understand that. And it is a grind. It's very
And
much a
sometimes
grind.
dealing with very big personalities, right? Or
Oh, yeah.
these
Yeah.
egos or personalities.
Huge. That's
Very
a big
true.
part of being an executive in the very highest levels in media and entertainment. A lot of times what Bob Iger and others are doing is they're negotiating with talent. So they have to be able to come down out of that business strategy and be able to smooth the skids with whoever they're trying to woo into being their next movie star, or
Yes.
already a movie star.
Yeah,
So,
very
yeah.
true. It's its
Yeah.
own little niche of like chasing news stories. I've seen reporters write.
Yeah.
They're change their writing right up until the go live,
Yep.
cuts the kit to them. It's very nerve wracking. And just, yeah, it's a different way to build your career, right? Going from small town to small town that people
Yeah.
don't know
Isn't
about.
it funny? And compared to that, Tiana, you're like, nobody wants to push the payroll button. I'll
I
do
know.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, let me go.
I try to avoid one area, stuck my foot in my mouth in another area. It's fine. I'm here. We're
Yeah.
we're all here today. So
Yeah, right. Well, look, I mean, who cares how you find your way, your niche, I guess, right? I mean, if you find your way to whatever it is, that's all that matters, And hey, we've had Ryan, right, was on here, started out living the dream as a mechanical engineer and realized I don't want to sit in a cube and I don't want to do this, and pivoted to his, media sort of work. So that's okay. You can do that now, I think, more than ever. So, but Tiana, I got to ask you, are you a native ATLian or are you an out of towner that moved here?
So my father was in the military. So I was
Okay.
technically born overseas, but we were stationed in Savannah, Georgia. So I am
Okay.
true Georgian. I've lived in Georgia all my life, but I always had family here in Atlanta. So every summer I
Yeah.
was up this way. And then after college, I lived up here for many years. And then of course moved around during my career. But I would say, yes, Atlanta is home to me. It's where my base
Yeah.
is, where my, family friends are. So yeah. So
Yeah.
not
Very
truly
cool.
born and raised in Atlanta, but kind of, I would say at this point I'm grandfathered in. I'll give
Yeah.
myself that.
Yeah, me too. 15 years I've been here. This is like, I used to sort of, not dream, but, as a kid, I was like, I want to live in Atlanta, and I was a Braves fan as a kid, it's kind of normal when you lived in probably the Southeast, you got to see the Braves is all there was on TV, or the Cubs, I guess. But yeah, this was like the big city to me. And so living here is kind of interesting now thinking back on that. But what a great city. And I don't know if people realize how much, just how cool it is here. And again, how much HR is here. There's so many cool people here in the industry, big name people that live here that I think is totally overlooked. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I will say that too, because I would say mid-20s, I moved out to Los Angeles out on the West Coast, and I lived there for almost 10 years before I moved back here a few years ago. And I was shocked. I was not sure how I was going to feel when I moved back home. It's like a big deal to
yeah,
be from a small town and to move to the West Coast. Pete and Julie, you guys travel all over, so you kind of know how that is.
yeah,
And so from me, it's like I wasn't sure, but once I got back here, literally, I have no clue how they put Truist Stadium where they put it. I didn't even like the
yeah,
here before. I don't know how they squeeze that in. There are so many companies, Pete, like how you just mentioned, that have been built here and are continuing to come here. So definitely not missing out on anything, right? It's
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember my first week being back, I heard on the news that Atlanta is now considered the mini Hollywood. And I was like,
Oh
I
yeah,
just
yeah,
left. I just left Hollywood.
yeah.
But yes, it is basically that now, right? We're our own
That's so
little
cool.
pocket, so it's good. It's great.
Yeah. So I want to talk about your work because, like, you're out there on the front lines with people, companies, and leaders who are obviously dealing with a lot of the things that we talk about, digesting some of the tech we're talking about. What's the pulse out there? Like, what's going on? Right now with the frontline and HR
Yeah,
leaders.
so look, I'd say outside of the obvious, the two what I like to say letters that are taking over the world, AI. There's
Yeah.
heavy compliance focus from what I'm seeing. I do a lot of support outside of HRIS within the taxation world. And so, post COVID, where employees are now working more remote and companies are now having to open up in multiple states, lots of companies and people in those seats didn't know how to properly apply for IDs, how to properly set up
Yeah.
systems to code that way. So that's a big part that I'm focused on. Lots of back end cleanup with filings, getting people properly registered, obviously going back to the handbooks and making sure employees are, given proper handbooks when it comes to PTO policies, sick times, and all of those changes, even down to the localities of different states.
Yeah.
That's been a really, really important aspect of things. And then really just the employee experience. I've been saying
Hmm.
several times on my side that this is now, from when, in my opinion, more of an employee market versus an employer market, where
Yeah.
people used to want to work for these big companies and do whatever. And now it's like, no, you're going to be flexible with me. This is what I want. I want to be at home. I want this. I don't want a pizza day anymore. And so that's a big thing of just like helping build the systems and
Hmm.
getting these C-suite executives to understand that from your recruiting stance, from the time you're sourcing to when your recruiters are having that first conversation with employees, through the hiring process, well, interview process, but then hiring and onboarding into their first pay is like very critical, right? That's the first
Yeah.
taste that they have of your
Oh
company.
yeah.
You start to
That
mess it up.
candidate experience.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's just really important. So really helping train people to understand that and making sure their system is properly set up for 2025, right?
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah.
like not 1995. So that's a big thing too.
Tiana, one of the things I've been hearing, I don't know what size companies you're working with. Probably, I think you told me mid to
Mid-market.
smaller, maybe.
Hmm.
Yeah, mid market. One of the things I was talking to some folks about recently was about, I think I was talking to some brokers, and they were talking about how, one of the things that frustrates them is they'll see companies make a change with their technology. In actuality, what's happening is there's some sort of a friction, there's some sort of a pain, maybe, and maybe there's been some failures or some miscommunications or whatever. That's always going to happen. But what happens is oftentimes they're saying like, look, it's actually just sort of like a functionality misunderstanding that the functionality is there or the service is there or the capability is there, but they're not communicating with their vendors. And then they're going and making these sort of emotional decisions and they're not actually buying tech on a business outcome. Do you see that as well? And are companies getting better at tying business outcomes in the smaller market, tying it to their HR? Because I talk to a lot of business leaders who I think they still see them as separate things. And I think there's a maturing that has to happen there for a lot of folks. But
Yeah, I would say slowly starting to see that.
yeah.
If you have the right like executives in the seat that don't mind rolling up their sleeves, then they
Hmm.
do understand that, hey, look, we're paying for this system and our team clearly isn't using it to its capacity. Like one of my recent
Hmm.
clients, was hearing something from her HR manager, and I had to say, to the president, look, you're using like say a UKG, you're not using a
Yeah.
a smaller mom and pop unknown system.
Yeah.
Like there's no way your system isn't going to do this. So That's typically
Yeah.
what, I'm brought in to really help mitigate with. The problem is what I see a lot is probably what your brokers are speaking to is a lot of just like change management. I'm sure
Yeah.
you both have absolutely heard this in your career. We've always done it this way. And people will say no to something because they just don't want to do it or they just don't want
Yeah.
to learn. So what I have had to learn in my, consulting career is not everyone is so receptive to change. And sometimes I'm excited about the opportunity, so I come in, like, very impulsive, like a bulldozer, and I've had to learn to, like,
Yeah.
digress in that and help massage
Yeah.
people because not everyone thinks like me, right? And so, that's where I really see, the disconnect at, but it definitely all the time is not a system thing, and it's very
Yeah.
hard to tell people that when they have been having bad experiences with systems for so many years and don't get the proper customer service, right? Or they get told
Yep.
different things, to try to
Yep.
like
Yep.
reset that. Because as you all know, going through a full implementation is just when you have, hey, just take a couple weeks to understand a system and a new module and train your population instead of taking, months or a year to implement a new
Yeah.
system. It's really hard to kind of change that mindset there.
Yeah, yeah. I wish there were more leaders, executive leaders, particularly young, less mature, in less mature companies that would read the book, "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," because it now more than ever is a time when you can't assume that just do more of what we've always done is going to take us to where we want to be, if we even know where we want to be. And I think too many companies are holding on to that. Maybe we could even point to that, Julie, in the banks, right? With this open banking thing about how they haven't really innovated. And now they're grasping to hold on to what they've built over these years because the model's breaking down, and they haven't pivoted and done the right things. What got you here won't get you there. And I think now more than ever, that applies to every business.
I think sadly, sometimes a leader has to go through multiple iterations where they've assumed
Yeah.
that, a tech jump will fix their problems. And so they jumped from one to the other of the pays or whichever guy, they're working with. And then realized that I've never took the time to address some of the foundational issues. So if I did a poor deploy of job architecture or of roles-based access, then I can't leverage self-service and I can't leverage, automation and workflow because I don't have it set up appropriately so that the right people are seeing and doing the right things, right? And so you can either fix that, which could be almost akin to a redeploy, which is a big effort, or you can jump to the next product. And if you jump to the next product and you don't actually do something different when you implement the next time around, you end up in the same place. I'm working with a client that has done 2 jumps. They're on their 3rd. And it's like, well, so what do we need to do differently so that you don't end up with just the next flavor of
Yeah.
technology that doesn't suit your needs? It's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
common.
I would say, I still go back to the fact that it's your people, right? It really does kind of boil down to a lot of the people aspect of things. And I always like to go back to the human aspect in HR that we really have to just make sure we don't like lose, right? It like if you have the right people in place that are at least willing to understand, even if they're not an expert on the system, if they're at least willing to understand or get on some calls and learn, that avoids a lot of headache in the end. Because to your point, Julie, you go to another system, you put in all this work. It's garbage in, garbage out data, but also you still have your people, the disgruntled ones, the ones who may not even want to embrace this new system. There could be arguments and fights internally, like what Pete mentioned, all the friction that happens internally. That's never going to go away. You have to literally get back to the basics foundationally, try to like establish, what your future is going to look like. If it's not the right person, unfortunately, get them off the bus. You need the right people not only on the bus, but in the right
Yep.
seat on the bus, right? Like
Yeah.
Jim Collins explains it great and Good to Great, another book, which I think is really good
Yep.
too, that explains that. So I think with that piece, just really important. Organizations really need to just get back to the basics, foundationally figure out, what their vision is as a company, where they want to go as a company, and then essentially the rest will kind of align itself as long as you're following on that right path.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I posted something a little while ago, Julie, about we talked about this in our last episode. I met a Dayforce customer, and I'd say, I was trying to figure out, like, if I could put a number on it. I bet I would say maybe 1 in 6 to 8. I'll say this for. I'm meeting more mid-market, small market firms who have made an HCM investment of some kind over the years. In this case, it was a Dayforce customer. about 5,000 employees. And I was asking about, do you have AI in your business? And he said, not strategically, not in a material way. Are people using ChatGPT? Probably. But at a corporate level, they're not mandating or have key initiatives yet. And they're in an interesting industry. It's not something I think you could probably rush off and do anyway. It's going to take time. But the point was, I asked if he was using the AI in Dayforce in this case, and he was. And I said, in that case, you're kind of the only AI at scale across your process that is in the business. And he said, yeah, I guess so, in a lot of ways. So I posted something about this because I think this is really, really cool, right? Like, yeah.
I think
Go
you
ahead.
missed one part of this description, which
Yeah.
is the way that he got to AI and the way
Yes.
that he's using AI is he's using it embedded in the product.
Exactly.
Right? That
Sorry.
is Dayforce.
Yes, by way of a commercial HCM investment. Exactly. It's not like he was given a budget and said, here, go do something. He adopted it basically through Dayforce, right? Just like maybe someone might be doing with Workday or any of these platforms,
Turn it
ADP,
on.
anything. So my point here is I think this is super, super exciting for HR. Never mind all the opportunities we have to improve our lives and do the work we were always meant to be doing, which is guiding our organizations. But maybe HR might actually be leading their company into the future as an innovator, which I think is going to further raise their eminence and drive business outcomes. So I'm just curious, have you seen any of that? Because it's not something that I'm seeing once in a while, again, not every day, but once in a while, but enough that you can say this is happening,
Yeah, I mean, look, I like to tell people if you're not doing it, you are behind the boat at this point.
Yeah.
If
Oh, yeah.
foundationally you're not at least trying, if you're not, of course, with HR and payroll data, we need to implement some AI policies. We know at this point that we don't want to just drop anything into these bots and these chats, but we've got to utilize it. I mean, I'm seeing what larger companies that are already merging HR into IT, which has already been like an HRIS, I guess, kind of function to kind of bridge the gap between multiple departments. But I think from my end, it's really, really important that we don't get too far behind. And I don't want to say this negatively, but I know that there are some HR and payroll people in seats and my colleagues as well, where we are used to doing things a certain way. Even I
Yeah.
used to be guilty of this from a payroll stance. You coddle your payroll data. Once you get in,
Yep.
fix stuff, you spend years fixing it. You don't want anyone to touch it. You have your
Yeah.
process, like getting paid. You want to like leave it be. But now is the time to start like growing and enhancing, right? Not getting worried that AI is going to replace your job, but looking at it as a tool and embrace it and allow it to get you to the next level. Do an evaluation of what areas in your HR world can AI take over? All these smaller
Yeah.
questions that people are coming to your door, pinging you on Teams or Slack for. Can you help implement a bot? And then keyword, like how Julie kind of pointed out earlier, implement the bot. So like
Yeah.
help yourself become more strategic where now you try to figure out, you get connected with your IT department and try to figure out how to build this bot, program in the questions and the answers and be a part of that implementation and add that to your resume. That's great. And help that, be an enhancement to your own roles and your own experience. So it's the opportunities are endless. It's just opening people's minds and
Yeah.
getting
Agreed.
getting out of like this is what we're used to doing and no, I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to pay attention to it because there's lots of companies that I go into and sometimes I worry about the people in these roles because the world outside of these companies is growing and changing every minute of every
Yeah.
day and you're
Yep.
stuck in this office in this cubicle and you're not even embracing anything, God forbid something happen, like, and you have to step outside, you're going to be so far behind. Like, you're not even going to be able to even
Yeah.
interview, right? Because you
Yeah.
don't even
Yeah.
know what's happening in the application process anymore. So that's my only biggest worry. We got to start embracing it and trying to implement it and just, accept where the world is going right now. It's not stopping.
Agreed.
So we have no choice.
Agreed.
And look, hasn't that already happened naturally with talent? Let's just call out on the payroll side of the house where, you're with an organization that's using legacy payroll software forget AI and tickets and all the other innovations that surround the service delivery. But if you're still on JD Edwards and you're running JD Edwards payroll over and over and over again, the world's moved on, like 6 new generations of SaaS and cloud software. It's really hard. You're torn between being that reliable process focused person who gets it done right, and oh my God, like how far behind am I possibly getting to what's happening in the rest of the industry?
Tiana, do you see these C-suites getting maybe a different reshaping their lens on what HR and their needs? The fact that this technology and support and engagement and all of that is important to their business. Are you seeing a better attitude towards it?
Definitely not as much as I would like to see, I could say, just because,
Yeah.
there are unfortunately some companies that kind of don't realize the importance of HR, just, and
Yeah.
like I said on my side before and in some other conversations is HR and payroll don't typically bring in the bacon per se,
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
out making sure it's flowing, but from a revenue stance, they don't necessarily see that, right? And so sometimes it is hard to get through to them that this is really, really important and that HR does need to have a seat at the table. But the more and more AI is in the news, naturally that's going to go back from an HR stance, that's going to go back to your HR systems and HRIS systems. And how can we maybe save money and save time for our team? And so there are more conversations happening. I would say not as much as I would like to have seen, at least on my side, but it is making its way because
Mhm.
there's no way around it. And then unfortunately with the implementation of new systems, but with a lot of layoffs and stuff, naturally HR has to become involved in that. And so just making sure you're in compliance and handling that properly to avoid the company losing out on money and potential, lawsuits is also really important. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, HR is your foundation. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion to executives, but it is still the foundation, the compliance side of.
Yeah.
So we do always need to be involved in some way.
Yeah. We don't bring in the bacon. Payroll doesn't bring in the bacon, but they will gross it up and make sure it's on your W-2.
We bring in the
So
farmer, dang it.
we
There you go. We
it
make
will be
sure,
on your W-2.
yes, we make sure your bacon is happy every pay period and every year when they go to file without any issues. Okay. So
Yeah, yeah. I was in a room full of CHROs this week in New York from some very big companies, and there was someone who talked about one was from a famous restaurant chain, and they talked about how they were giving employees free food at the restaurant every day, like a free meal. And the employees asked, could they maybe swap that for like a grocery gift card because they don't necessarily want to eat whatever's at that restaurant every day, which is fair. And someone immediately said, "Are you grossing that up? Are you taxing that?" Yeah, like you can't help themselves. You know what I mean? They can't help themselves.
yeah, it is important.
Yeah.
Look, it's a season to give out gift cards now, and please,
Yes.
we'll
Yep.
try to avoid that. It's just, yeah,
Yes.
just do it
Cash
well.
is cash and cash is taxable.
Exactly. Very true.
Anyway, all right. Well, look. What else, Tiana? Anything else? Any other pulses you can share out there that's going on? I want to get to some fun. I want to play around a little bit with some of these news stories. But
Yeah,
what else you hearing and seeing?
yeah, I do just want to stress just I know we touched on it briefly on the AI side of things and implementation and systems aside, but it is really important for our people to understand that you need to start embracing these systems. You need to start understanding that. There's a lot of my colleagues that call me for insight, and I have to try to coach them when they're going into an interview, right? Because they've been with the company for 10 plus years and they haven't had to deal with this, right? So just open up, a ChatGPT, a Gemini or something, and just drop in some questions, get some insights from there.
Yeah.
And, it'll be
Ideate.
really helpful in your experience and career.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, we've explored that a little bit here about, you got to ideate, brainstorm, use it as a teammate, not a tool, right? I think all of that is get in the game
So
even if
all
your
of our
employer's not in the
CISOs
game.
out there, do that on your personal laptop.
Be careful. Yes, 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 yes.
And ask some really benign things and
Yes,
just test
yes.
the waters that way,
No
okay?
PII, none of that. But you're right. You can still use ChatGPT to talk through process improvement, talk through, all kinds of things, right? You can use it as a sounding board to help you get ideas for how to improve things and how to do things differently and how to stay up on things that are coming out. So lots and lots of ways, so many tools. Okay, all right. So good segue here. I got some news stories I thought we could cover. And I don't think I'm going to share all these links. When you share links sometimes on podcasts, you can get flagged if those links go bad at any point. So I'm not going to necessarily put all these in here because maybe it'll cause problems in the episode. But one of the first ones, Julie, I thought was pretty interesting. And I want to see how many organizations they talk to about this. But there's a census, I guess, survey that went out and somehow gathered data on AI usage for companies over 250 employees. I might need to pop my glasses on here for this. And basically, what it found was that there was a bit of a decline and a pullback, from AI. That it had kind of peaked, I think, over the summer, and then maybe started to draw back a bit. So I'm just curious what you think. What do you think that might be from? Are people maybe fatigued? Are people maybe not finding the value? We've seen some studies say, and that was a small one, by the way, that MIT study, I think, saying, hey, we're pulling back. But what I think the story there is they had people doing what we said, doing things in silos and not strategically at a maybe an enterprise level, right? Enterprise sort of oversight, I guess, governance.
Yeah.
So
Well, first
what
of
do you
all,
think? What do you think?
like 250 employees is small, right? It's small market.
Well, and up, and up,
And up, yes.
and up. So
and
who
up.
knows? Who knows? Yeah.
But let's just say, it's the jumbos and the usual suspects that have armies of folks that are,
Yeah.
putting concentrated effort on it. And I would say that, even some of the earlier studies that we did at Heron Palmer, the surveys, as much as a year and a half ago, did show that the way that folks are entering and fiddling around with AI is, those just individual pioneer, minded folks that will
Yeah.
think of a use case and spend a little bit of time working at it. And,
Yeah.
that's why we hear so much noise right now around governance and policy and how important that is, because that could lead to some unexpected and unwanted behaviors and trials and errors. But in fact, there's always going to be pioneers that are pushing things forward until we find table stakes in these core HR platforms that are embedding features and functionality that make it safe to test
Yeah.
and to try they've embedded different use cases already to, for kind of to mass adoption, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
think we're right at that threshold where, people were told go and do, and it's like, do what? What the hell am I supposed to do? I'm trying,
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. To, okay, oh, wait a minute. Like, here's a way that I can do it within the context of my job. It's got more structure and form and order around it.
Yeah.
And so,
Yep.
I feel like that's what I would suggest that's saying. How about you,
Yeah.
Tiana?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Just people jumping on the trend, right? It came to us full force, and then I think people started realizing, wait a minute, there's not a lot of laws yet around, and we don't really understand. Maybe we bit off more than we can chew, and started to kind of backpedal, or maybe not wanting to be the first. They jumped in and they were like,
Yeah.
oh, let's just see, let someone else fail, and then we'll learn from them. Type of thing could have also been a reason behind that.
Yeah. Yeah. So just to clarify here, yeah, and I want to go look this up because I'm wondering if there's more. It was a quick article on this. There's probably more data. This is the U.S. Census Bureau's Business Trends and Outlook survey that went to 1.2 million firms. So this is a material data point. 250 above. And part of that mentions, I don't know that it was part of that survey, but it did mention that 58% of the S&P 500, which would be some of the biggest companies in America,
Right.
globally maybe, 58% are mentioning the AI technology in their annual reports or quarterly events, right? So there's still some that are got to get more in the game, but it's interesting to see this, and maybe there's some seasonality to some of these answers.
I also think
yeah.
like that's not specific to HR application and
No,
use case
just
for AI,
enterprise
right? And so
usage. Yeah.
I do find that, as folks think about how can this make my life better, there's almost like a robotics process automation mindset that sets in. Like, what if it could do this, but like boring and mundane part of my work for me, instead of that revolutionary thinking that we know will come.
Yeah.
As people get a little bit more proficient.
Absolutely. And look, there's already, you got Wall Street screaming there's a bubble. So who knows, right? We'll see. I mean, there's always a hype cycle, right? And so we're cooling maybe a little bit and things will come around, but it's here and it's everywhere and it's infused in everything we're buying. So I don't see how it's going to be avoided anyway.
I think for me,
to be honest,
too, it's like it's been embedded. Right? We didn't really, it wasn't as popular,
Spotify.
Right? Like it was, we were all kind of being prepped for it. We just didn't have a name for it yet. So yeah, I would always say for, to people just, yeah, I definitely, I was initially one that was so against AI many years ago. And now I'm like, oh no, I've got to I can't be a systems person and not accept it,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, ladies, I want to ask you both, are you baseball fans? That's why I wore my jersey today. Plus, Tiana's here. It's the Braves, Atlanta.
yes.
But are you baseball fans?
Partially, I
Eh,
guess you could say. If you ask me favorite player
Yeah.
names, I probably couldn't name off.
You're not a Tigers fan, Julie? You're not a Detroit Tigers fan?
yeah, listen, I'm never gonna be the stats and but
Yeah.
I do know the game. I know how it's played. I know how to keep
Okay.
score, right?
Okay. Yeah. The reason that I ask is because the Major League Baseball has been experimenting since 2021 with basically AI and technology to help with replays and challenges, if you will, right? There's challenging in baseball now. You can I think they do it in the playoffs, maybe. I don't know if they do it year round, but I know they have it in the playoffs where they can challenge certain plays and calls and things, right? So they've been using this thing called it's the ABS. It's the Automated Ball Strike Challenge System. And in 2026, it is coming to the major leagues permanently. So it's going to allow teams to challenge certain calls in real time and leverage ball tracking technology to reduce umpire decision making. So, do you think maybe we're going to have like robot umps, maybe robot referees in other sports? We're just getting women in some spots in our referees in sports that we can't, we go and start getting
I feel
robots
like
now.
we're
I
gonna
mean,
hear a lot of pissed off umps. Really. Like
yeah,
just
right,
going, what do you know? I was there. What do you I don't
right.
know. I just see
But at the same time, I don't know if you ladies watch football, but there is constantly conspiracy
yes,
theories and just
yes.
anger over why does Mahomes or who's somebody more famous get calls that others don't, and
I guess at this point, we've got to expect it, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
you're going to conferences now. You see these robots walking around. We now have Waymo in the industry. We also have the robot food deliveries. I mean, I don't. At least I would hope no one would be surprised if there was a robot standing around by an ump.
yeah, right,
I still think that you're still going to need a human there. I don't
yeah,
want to regret this a year or two from now if someone replays it and there's not a human there. But I feel like we're still going to need that human intuition, regardless,
I
right?
agree,
A robot
yeah,
can't necessarily mimic that, but I do think that just with the eye, what the eye can and
yeah,
cannot see, that there is going to be some type of technology surrounded in certain
yeah,
areas. I think that definitely needs to be an expectation for people.
As they say, there will be umps with AI and umps without AI.
yeah, yeah, good
Right?
one.
Which do you want to
Put
be?
that
you
on your
know,
resume.
Yeah, I know, right? To be fair, I think this is about the fan experience, to be honest with you, because Major League Baseball has always been kind of under pressure about, come on, you got to speed the games up. It's a long process. And you've also got to make it a little bit more exciting. So I think what's interesting here is they said they tested this during spring training and they had about an average of four calls per game challenged to a 52.2% success rate for the challenger, I'm assuming. And they solved it in 13.8 seconds on average. That's the story. The
Yeah.
13.8 seconds and the accuracy to make the fan make move it along, right? We don't have time to sit here for you to look at the replay 25 times to figure out whether it was in or out. The computer or the algorithm or the AI can quickly do that, right? And I think
Listen,
that's
if
what the
we have to
bottom story
watch
is.
25 times the replay, then like do it now and let's get it
Yeah.
over with.
Yeah.
you
Well, that's
know?
what it is now, but you're not getting to watch it. You're watching it while the sportscasters show up, but the
Yeah.
guy's under the
Or
hooded
commercials.
thing
Yeah.
looking for the
Yeah.
answer. So, and
Yeah.
then he's going to make an answer that somebody's not going to like.
Exactly. You're still going to get
All
popcorn
right.
coming at you.
Yeah. Nobody's happy. Nobody wins. Okay, let's go to some maybe more controversial ones, Julie. Okay.
Okay.
Have you ladies been to San Francisco recently?
Very recently,
Not
Okay.
yes.
recently, no.
You've been to the airport then?
Yeah.
Okay. And I understand it's the same, I think, in Philly and maybe somewhere in New Jersey. Have you bought anything recently? Bought a Starbucks, anything in the San Francisco airport recently?
Not in the airport, but
Meals.
other
Meals.
airports, yes.
Yeah. Did you notice on your receipt, Julie, there's a 5%, I believe it is, surcharge for employee benefits for the airport workers?
I should say I noticed it, but
Yeah.
honestly, I didn't. It was a
I
travel
noticed it. I
reimbursed
noticed it.
expense.
Well, true. Okay, so let's just pause there, right? I think you can Google this. And I'm not going to go into how they got there. I'm sure it's political. I'm sure whatever. I just want to talk about the point, right? Because I'm sure in your circle of friends and in, online, I see a lot of people complaining about the whole tip culture, how things have gotten a little weird, right? Like someone posted a picture the other day of a kiosk I don't know if you've been to the airport. Some of the airports now you can walk in, there's a kiosk. There might be a person in there overseeing things, but you're pretty much checking yourself in and out, right? You're paying whatever. But it asked for tips. And someone was like, who am I tipping? And what for? Right? So there's that angst.
Yeah.
But now, if you get a bill, I've seen a lot of, and you can Google this, and there's a lot of angst on social as well about, should I be paying for this? And so I have an opinion, but I want to lay this out there. What are your thoughts on paying whatever it is as a line item on your bill for whatever you're buying for employee benefits or pay or anything?
So not for like a kiosk thing. I mean, because obviously we do lots of self-check.
Well, that's a tip.
Yeah.
That's a tip. But the concept of you being charged a line item for employee benefits or employee pay,
Yes.
you know?
It all depends on the experience that someone is having. So if it's optional and it's like, hey, look, and it gives a suggestion if you want to add, then I think I'd be open to that. But I don't want to say forcing, but just automatically putting it on a bill, I think is a little bit much. Especially if there's not like disclaimers when you're.
Wait, are you talking tips? Or are you talking the surcharge?
The benefits, the employee benefits.
Oh, the surcharge. Yeah. It's just, everybody's paying it no matter what you.
Yeah.
Certain vendors, certain things you buy, surcharge of whatever percentage for employee benefits.
Yeah, I'd still like to have that be an option. I mean,
you think it should be option?
Well, because
Okay.
if you're a person running a business, right? Like to me, like us running our own business, like that's a cost, right? And so I get that there's differences between small businesses, but I'm not sure if I would feel as a business owner if I'd feel comfortable putting that cost on, my clients that are coming in. I think that would be essentially my responsibility. But I think if it's left open as an option and someone has the funds, especially in the economy right now with inflation, then it's okay to leave open. But I think that should be an option for someone to want to give that extra and understand what that is for versus forcing it, onto someone.
Okay.
It feels like, first of all, I'm sorry for whoever has to figure it out accounts payable wise, like how to account for that and what you have to do with that, because it has to be a slippery slope, and it
it's
probably
coming
just
into
goes into
POS.
some revenue bucket that offsets charges. I don't even know.
Yeah.
So I would actually probably. I would probably actually have a conversation about it. And like, what can you do? If that's their policy, then you just don't
It's not
buy
the policy.
things
It's
there.
it's the locality's compliance requirement. It's
Yeah,
part of
well,
I
then
guess their union, maybe?
essentially a local tax
It's
is
a
what
local
it
tax.
is,
It's a local
essentially.
tax.
And
Yeah.
so, okay, then, you have to. But I think we're in for a reckoning. We're in for a big reckoning about everything in the tips department. Not only because no tax on tips. I waitressed for 20 years.
But
I don't
hold
know
on,
if
though.
people.
It's not a tip. This is separate
I know,
from tips.
I understand.
Right?
I'm just saying, and it's in the category of add-ons to what an advertising price is. So whether the dilemma is what is the fair pricing that you should be representing for things when you have different add-on components, tips or whatever, whether the beef is why the hell is 20, 25 and 30% the default now for tipping? What on just because people won't do math in their head. And and no tax on tips. And then should you be earning below minimum wage? I know I'm talking more about tips than this add-on, local tax that you're talking about. But what we're talking about is, an advertised pricing of X and a final price. Airlines do this too.
It's a good point.
That is 2x X, and
I agree.
so it's problematic for me. I'll just take my money somewhere else.
I think you're right. I think that, look, at the end of the day, it's super polarizing to see that on the receipt. It's same in the same way that it is when you go. A lot of people will show. I haven't had this happen to me, and I'm in Vegas all the time. But I've seen some places since the pandemic putting these surcharges that are like 18 and 20% for just whatever. I don't know what it's even for. But what I think is this. The optics are polarizing. The facts that, to your point, I agree. I don't love the fact that you're saying to me the sandwich is $7, but actually, I know I have to pay tax and I got to pay all that, but it's actually more, right? It's 5 or whatever percentage it is. It's more. At the end of the day, the way I look at this is we're going to pay this one way or the other. We're either going to pay it visibly by that line item, or we're going to pay it indirectly by them putting a higher price on whatever it is that they sell.
True.
Right? do I mind paying an extra buck for somebody to have a more livable wage for my burger or to have benefits? I don't mind that. I don't mind that. But to your point, Julie, I'm with you. I think you're going to win that. We're going to win that battle a lot easier if you bake it into the original price to say, look, this is the price because of where we are and what we're operating, I guess,
Here's where that
Yeah.
backfires 1,000%. It
Yeah.
backfires when somebody who recognizes that looks at the employee and says, you must have some kick ass benefits,
Oh, by the way, they
'Cause
do. It's
look,
pretty good. Yeah.
and then the employee goes, yeah, sure I do. Right. And then there's something that
Yeah. Yeah.
happens that creates a massive disconnect between the fact that you're supposed to be doing something that is, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know if you can't call it goodwill if it's forced upon you, but
Right.
there's an opportunity for employees themselves to make fun of that and to look at it and
Yeah.
go, yeah, sure, because my benefits aren't any better than, than the grocery
Yeah.
bagger
Yeah.
down the street, or whatever it is. And then you just cause cultural issue. Then you caused, friction and noise
Yeah,
for what?
agreed. Yeah, if I recall correctly reading this, it was part of part of this was that these employees by law needed to be provided a higher quality plan. I think they call it like a platinum plan.
Okay.
And that had something to do with the out-of-pocket amounts that they paid or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they came up with this law, but very interesting. And I'm curious if we're going to see more of
Is
these.
going to launch into ACA and a bunch of
Yeah.
other stuff right
I
now.
know.
Yeah.
That also kind of clicks to me too when we're talking about California and the different levels of
Yeah.
their plans. But then at the same
Compliance.
time, as you guys were talking, I'm thinking we're talking about San Francisco. So for anyone out there who may not know, I mean that is a higher level of of California, right?
Yeah.
Where I mean, of course we know LA, but that is that tech space. So maybe I wouldn't be surprised, if I did see that. But at the same time, they're probably banking on people who don't pay attention, to that. Like for me, I'll just probably pay and it might be expensive, but I might be in a rush and just not pay attention. For other people may actually, focus
Yeah.
on that. And I'm sure in the city they understand there was clearly had to have been some vote and stuff on the news about it. But I still, yeah, I still think just keeping it optional. But then at the same point, if you did increase your cost right from there, I think it'd be easier for us to digest versus like, oh wow,
Yeah.
like, what I'm paying for what?
I think it'd be more innocuous.
Yes, very true.
Yeah, it would be more innocuous, and I think people would be more, well, obviously wouldn't know about it, but we'd be less likely to get so fiery over it. But I understand. I mean, it's tricky, right? It's like, is it my responsibility? Is it the employer? Like, why am there's no right answer, I don't think. I
Yeah,
really don't. I think it's more about, what's the right thing to do for people. And I don't mind paying extra for something. If that's what it costs to bring it to market, that's what it costs. I'm in a premium place. I mean, I understand New York City's, JFK is a lot more expensive than buying something to eat at Atlanta. I mean, it just is what it is, right? It's where we are. And I think some of that comes with it. So anyway, okay, here's the last one. This is more of a frontline manager sort of thing. And I wanted the HR lenses here. I've managed plenty of people. I've managed plenty of HR people. But I want to talk about what we would do in this case. So I don't know if you saw this video going around of the father. He was a UPS worker who was told by his boss that he couldn't go pick up his daughter from school because she was sick because he didn't have any PTO. And he got on a rant. I don't know if you saw that. I'm not going to post it. But he ranted a bit about like, listen, I will never, ever, I don't give a damn about PTO. I will never turn my back on my daughter and I will always be there for her. And if you can't understand that, I'm sorry. Right now, you can look at this a couple of different ways. And I know what I would have done as a manager. But I want to see what you ladies think. Like, I think part of this is a management problem in that if that's the way it was worded to him, that's the problem. Right. And rather than try to help him and maybe word it differently, it's not that you shouldn't leave because you don't have PTO. It's that you shouldn't leave because we needed you here for this shift that you scheduled yourself for, or you've been scheduled for, right? That's more of probably the conversation. But then how do you help them deal with this dilemma? And it's a real dilemma. So I was just curious, what are your thoughts on
yeah. From an
who's right,
HR, yeah, from an HR standpoint, you got to make that exception, right? You got to. I mean, now if
Yeah.
if it goes unpaid and that's on the employee, and just have a conversation if they could come back after
Right.
they keep their daughter off. And this is where the flexibility of work. Maybe it was not a role where they could, take a laptop home or log in later from home. It could have been just a
Mhm.
true on-site manufacturing role or something of that nature. But you definitely got to make that exception. Also, I think another thing is depending on the manager, supervisor, we know on the HR side that sometimes these managers and supervisors are just put into these roles. They're next in line.
Yeah.
It's their next career growth.
Yeah.
And as a company, we fail to train them properly. And so, so a lot of times
Yeah.
that does, fall back, on us as well. So it may not, fully have even been the manager's fault if that was a policy and they were told they can't take it. He's just regurgitating the policy. So it could have been a full suite thing. But I think in that situation, you've got to make that exception. And I've had that happen
Yeah.
through my management, through payroll.
Same. Yeah.
When your employees' kids go sick and it is payday and the system is down, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
literally happens at the worst time, as we know. You've got to just suck it up, So
Yeah.
that
Agreed.
I'd be on the employee side.
Yeah.
In most frontline workforces, that situation happens, and very few employees are saying, "Wait a minute, let me call my PTO hotline and tell
No
them
one.
I
No
need to
one.
go pick up." Like usually, I feel like usually it's an after the fact kind of thing, and it's like, "Where's Joey Driver? He's gone. He hasn't hit half of his route."
Yep.
Oh,
Yep.
you find it out and you deal with it, kind of after the fact. So, on the one hand, I'm torn, thinking like, this is an exemplary employee. He's calling the hotline
Yeah.
proactively because something's going on. On the other hand, like you don't know. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
I don't want to say haves and haves not, do or do nots. There are chronic users who
Sure.
become readily abusers of, stepping into the human needs that we
Yeah.
all have
Yeah.
in our workforce. And then there are others who are not. And so why was this just blanketly applied?
Yeah.
If it was blanketly applied, is there more to the story? I don't
Oh,
know.
in
But
fairness, we don't know
yeah,
all the
but I
story,
mean, in
but
the end, like I think everybody recognizes,
yep.
life happens. And if you're
Yeah.
going to be a good manager, you have to help support your
Yeah.
employees in at least an empathetic way. And I, as an employee, like I want to know. I really hate when I have to find out like somebody didn't show for some important client
Yeah.
calls, and I don't know why or where they are. Hey, I could have covered. I could have been there.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just all
Agreed.
about management culture, I think.
Yeah. I've been in this case. I've been in this situation more than once. I mean, you can't manage people in any world and not be. And my first thought has never gone to how much PTO do you have. It always goes to, is your daughter okay? Right. I mean, let's figure that out first. Are you going to be okay? Can we help you? Right. And normally, if you can show that empathy, people's attitude changes towards how you handle whatever. And we'll go deal with your daughter. I'll step in and drive the truck. I'll do what I have to do. Or I'll get someone else to do that. You go deal with your daughter and we'll address, if this is something happening every Thursday, then we got something we have to talk about. Or, hey, you are out of PTO and you're regularly off. You're taking time off. Is there something wrong? How do we help? Is FMLA something that you need? Because sometimes they might have a sick kid who they need FMLA to protect their role. And I'm getting all compliancy now, but you've got to protect their role and you've got to give them the opportunity and the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure this is probably, hopefully he's a good employee. But he cares about his daughter. And I don't blame a father for going and doing that, especially if maybe he's a single father, who knows? But I think you just got to look at it. I think this is the lens you got to bring now. If you aren't already a servant leader, you've got to come with that lens and understand that there might be more to the story. There's an iceberg behind maybe that little thing that you're seeing, I
Yeah.
guess, is
Well,
how I
look,
would
and
see
if
it,
you're the manager who makes this stuff right for employees when life
Yeah.
happens, those managers also end up being accountable to someone, and sometimes they take crap for,
Yeah.
not seemingly enforcing policy or having too many infractions or too much leakage or
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? So it's a ripple throughout the ecosystem of supervisors and managers and leadership, et
Yeah.
cetera, that requires a human touch.
Yeah, I also want to say too, so the conversation I had a few months ago was a colleague kind of reminiscing on their past experiences and coming up with the fact that like one time they were just really stressed out and they had a colleague literally look at them and just say, "How are you?" Right. And it was like just something
Yeah.
very that simple.
Yep.
And, maybe the person not having PTO was that they went on a trip or vacation time. But maybe it was because, to your point, Pete, that their daughter is actually sick and something is happening and
Yeah.
they actually need a human to reach out
Yeah.
there and help them through what their different options are. And so that's a piece where regardless of AI, regardless of the robots, regardless of these systems automations, we cannot let HR forget about the people. We can't let our
Yeah.
C-suite executives forget about the people, because real life is
Agreed.
really happening, Julie, like how Julie said.
Yeah, I'm so thankful. I personally was in the military at a young age, and my leadership style was forged off of. It was the only way we did things was servant leadership, and I found very quickly in the corporate world that I earned a lot of loyalty from people that had worked with me, because they knew that I actually genuinely cared about them as a human versus just a number and an FTE in my seat that I had to manage. And I think if you do that, you can earn a lot of equity with people. Right. When you can't pay the most and you don't have all the promotions that you want, or you can't give people everything that they want. If they know that you care and you're not fundamentally there to use them, if you will, it's free. It's free to
Yeah,
do
that
that.
brings
It's free to
loyalty.
care.
Yeah, that brings
Yeah.
loyalty, just that simple. And as you get older,
Yeah.
you start realizing what is really important, right? And so you start
Yeah.
evaluating careers. Even if you make a jump, you may realize, oh, the grass isn't greener. You may want to come back. So that all plays a factor into it. So yes, very
Yeah.
true.
Agreed. Agreed. Look, this has been super awesome. I hope you had fun, Tiana. I had fun doing this. We got to do more of these, Julie, where we just kind of
That's right.
get some of these interesting HR things out there, workplace things, and talk about them. But look, Tiana, where can everybody connect with you and get in touch?
Yeah, so absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, Tiana Neal, Tiana, and last name is Neal, not Neil. I know sometimes that gets
Yes.
confusing. But you can always connect with me there. I have all my links to, websites, podcast pages, as well. And then, like Pete mentioned, the Work Defined community we're a part of. So you can always click on their website and, get all of the good juice from us from there. So, but thank you so much, Pete and Julie, for having me. This is a great
Yeah.
conversation. Really enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to our ATL meetup with a bunch of ATLians. So,
Yes. I'm going to
Don't you
figure that
dare
out.
do that without me.
I'm going to figure that out. Can I tell you a secret? Imran, shout out Imran Sajid over at EpiUse. I told him we ought to figure out a way to do do something like that. But what we do is let's record podcasts there live. We've got so many folks that are in this area that have shows. We could set up, cameras and mics and all that and capture recordings. And maybe we even do one with all the podcasters together. Like there's just so many thought leaders in this town that I could bring together that would be really impressive set of people that I think we could do something really fun. And if we could get everybody to do it on the side, the problem is getting everybody in the same here at the same time.
yes,
That's very hard, but I would love to do something like that. I think it'd be
I
cool.
love to do. Yeah, I'm trying to do more in persons as well. So I will start dropping
Yeah.
some notes to you, Pete, on the side on just like
All
location
right.
things that come about. And
Let's
yeah,
figure it
especially
out.
with your network, we've got to. And then Julie, of
Yeah.
course, you got to fly in. So
Man, we got to get everybody. We got, Susan Richards from Sapient. We've got Jen Kozer, the VP of product from Workday here. Man, it just goes on and on. Imran, like I said, there's so many folks that we could bring together. Julie, you gotta come in. You're basically an ATL, and we'll just let
Yeah,
you. You hear a
I'll be
lot.
an honorary.
and then
You got to come too.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then Pete, what about is one of the guys from the Payroll Baddies? Am I even saying that right? Are they here? I think I saw a
that's
picture.
Imran. Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
Imran.
that's Imran's here. But Will over at it's about payroll.
Yeah.
I think
Oh
it's
yes,
Will
he is.
He will.
He
or
is
Brian. One of them lives here.
Yes, he is. Yeah, in Brookhaven. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's good.
So,
Okay, perfect.
man, it's a who's who of HR tech folks, and I think it would be really cool. So, anyway,
Perfect.
if anybody wants to help us figure that out, let's figure that out.
Yes.
All right, look, thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Tiana. Look, stick with us. We got a lot coming. And as always, like, subscribe, share. We need all the help we can get. So appreciate you. Take care.